Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Gene Girdley along with Ted Ings, and a big friend of the Fixed Ops Roundtable is back joining us again. We're excited to have her with us, Sarah Vantine. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sarah, let's see, you started off at the Fixed Ops Roundtable back in Las Vegas in February of this year, and you won the Best Practice Award, and you came back in April and back in June. So this is your fourth Fixed Ops Roundtable, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, you're a great friend of the Roundtable community, and you do great work for fixed operations. So Sarah Vantine is the Fixed and Variable BDC Director at Scott Clark Automotive Group. Sarah, the show is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ted. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Fixed Ops Roundtable, the greatest show. So one of the most important elements that your dealership really needs to consider, especially right now in the time of COVID, is your cohesive communication strategy. And so I'm going to be sharing some information about how dealers can craft unified digital messaging for their stores. So cohesive communication, how dealers can craft unified digital messaging. So obviously right now with COVID and so much information changing and being out there, it's really confusing for customers. Right now, the more cohesive and the more unified your digital messaging is, the more customers are going to feel more at ease with transacting with your business. Customers are engaging with your dealership in a variety of ways. Right now, you have so many different generational customers, people, millennial, boomer, whatever you want to call it, all across the different platforms. And the way that these customers interact with your dealership varies. So one customer might come to your service department through a Facebook ad. They might engage with you via Facebook Messenger. They might be somebody that's a loyal client of yours and they use your dealer website. They might check out your other social media channels, or they see television commercials, hear your radio spots. And they're also, in many cases, choosing to call into the dealership to have a conversation with a person. And as a BDC director for 3 different automotive dealerships in the Charlotte, North Carolina market, I can say that we have seen a huge increase in the phone part of our customer communication. And that makes a lot of sense. Customers right now are pretty isolated. And so they want to have that conversation with somebody, and they want to feel confident that the person they're talking to knows what they're doing. So it's super important that all of the information that's important to have out there for your customers is available across multiple channels. So what happens if you don't have that? Well, lack of communication, that leads to a lot of stress. Not knowing what the status of their vehicle is. So a customer that has their car in service, a customer that's playing phone tag with a service advisor trying to figure out when their car is going to be ready or how they can pay their invoice, or something like when a customer arrives at the dealership, not knowing exactly where to go, maybe not knowing exactly what the dealership's process is with COVID right now. Can they come into the service lane? Do they need to wear a mask? Are there any other precautions they need to take to bring their car in? So all of that not knowing leads to a lot of stress. And so that stress can build throughout that transaction, and it can all start from not being informed by having a unified digital and unified process across all of your messaging platforms. So for our dealerships, one of the most important things that our Business Development Center does is we work really hard to make sure that all of our customers are informed of the same processes and the same information that they would see on our signage, and that they would also see when they come in person to the dealership. And what I mean is, so offering like pickup and delivery service, just informing a customer in the process of setting that service appointment. You know, if that customer goes onto our Facebook page, they go onto our dealer website, they're going to see that same offering regardless of how they interact with us. And so then when a customer comes in, they're also seeing that signage in the showroom where we're offering that service to them. So having that clear communication across multiple channels that leads to less stress because a customer feels like, great, okay, I knew about that. That's how I was informed of that, and that's great information to have. If you don't,
Sarah, to your point, I must say, we take it for granted that a lot of times we assume the customer knows, but they don't know in many to most cases. So the fact that you are communicating this throughout is fantastic. Sorry, I just wanted to inject that.
Oh yes, no, and it's amazing. That leads to so much trust when a customer, regardless of platforms, if they come into your dealership and they just see it on the signage, they're going to question why the person on the phone didn't tell them about it. They're going to question why they didn't know about it up front. And so then that can lead to a lot of stress in the transaction if you're not transparent. Tying right into that is it's important to meet the customer where they're the most comfortable. And right now, customers have a lot of different comfort levels. Some people are carrying on business as usual. They have no problem going out in public. Their lives are really kind of plugging along exactly as they have. There's other people that are taking precautions and they're very nervous about going out in public, interacting with others, and servicing your vehicle. That can also be a stressful circumstance where customer doesn't necessarily understand or know what you have available for them. Informing a customer of all their options, even if a customer chooses to not use any of them, at least they feel like you're being transparent throughout that entire interaction and your entire communication. Thorough communication strategies can increase your appointment conversion. We've seen that time and time again in a business development setting because oftentimes we get calls back from customers that say, you know what, I called in earlier today to get a price quote. You informed me about all these different things that are available with your dealership. I called around and looked at some other places and I couldn't get any information out of them. So I'm going to come to you because I feel more comfortable interacting with a business where you're thoroughly communicating all of my options to me, and I feel more at ease with how transparent you are. And that also ties into proactive outbound call strategies. If we can proactively notify a customer about their upcoming service, that's going to reduce stress and that's going to reduce tension. We can also tie that same messaging as far as our communication and our unified message, tie that in with outbound phone calls. So then even if a customer doesn't set an appointment immediately, when we tell them about those services again, a customer feels more confident with our department, with our service, and they're more inclined to go ahead and book that appointment. Again, how an effective BDC can really help drive a unified message and cohesive communication with your stores. Targeted outbound phone calls coinciding with email and text communication is super important. So whatever marketing that you have out there, if you're email marketing your customer service specials, tying outbound phone calls to also hammer that same message, that's multi-channel communication to your customers, and it's also informing them of the importance of the services that they need. When you're doing those outbound phone calls, you're updating also your customer about important messaging that you're offering right now. So pickup and delivery services, contactless drop-off, disinfectant services, mobile services. If a customer hasn't seen your TV marketing, if they haven't been on your website recently, if they don't check their email, you are now at least in one channel being able to have that conversation with them to inform them of the different offerings that you have. So again, you're reaching the customer where they're most comfortable and where they interact with you. And so to continuing on that, setting up the right appointment expectations on an inbound phone call is going to really help your service advisors have a better relationship with the customer once they come in. If you have restrictions in your state or your county because of COVID, informing a customer up front about those changes, that's going to lead to a better experience because they, again, feel that you're doing your due diligence to inform them and establish that trust and transparency. The same thing goes for the service expectations. So the duration of the service. How long is this recall going to take? How long am I going to be expected to be around the dealership? Setting up those expectations up front might guide a customer to choose a different offering that you have, like pickup and delivery, because maybe a customer doesn't want to be in your showroom for 4 hours because they, would be nervous about being in that environment with other customers for that period of time. It'll help them choose the right options that are right for them when you set those expectations up front. And so then it also gives you another opportunity too to reiterate those different offerings that you have that coincide with your digital marketing efforts. If you're spending the time and energy and resources to market to customers, having that same communication on your inbound phone call is going to, again, echo everything that you're advertising. That's really how a BDC can help drive that. But there's so many other elements that are important to consider with your digital marketing and your messaging as well. And so that's really the heart and soul of how an effective BDC can really help with the cohesive messaging and communication that you have. And I hope you picked up some really valuable information to put into play at your stores.
Sarah, thank you so much. I do have one quick question for you. You mentioned that you oversee 3 dealerships as part of the Scott Clark Automotive Group. Just real quick, tell us how many folks are in your staff, and do they specialize in particular areas, or do they do a little bit of everything?
Yes, so our stores, we have Scott Clark Toyota, Scott Clark Honda, and Scott Clark Nissan. So in our Toyota store, we have a consolidated business development center that handles the phone calls inbound and outbound for all 3 locations. We not only do service, but we also do finance. We've actually found that a lot of the finance related phone calls that come into a dealership really are in line with service. And what I mean by that is, a customer calls, they have a question about their extended warranty that they bought. Well, logically, a customer is thinking, I bought this warranty in the finance department, therefore I'm going to call finance to find out if this part is covered under my warranty. Well, oftentimes a finance manager may not be available because they have a customer in front of them. So then this customer is leaving a message. Well, then that finance manager is also not informing them of maybe the information like, oh yeah, well, it might be, so call back and figure it out. That's not a good approach to have. So for us, we started taking all of these finance calls, and a lot of them, when we're talking to a customer and looking up their policies, it naturally leads right into a service appointment call. And so being able to inform them, yes, I do see that you have this warranty, and great news, it's possible. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and get your appointment set up. And the person on the phone is the right person for the job to set up that service appointment. I'll say for all of our call agents, so currently we have 14 agents within the department. We are actively recruiting and hiring, so we are looking to add more talent to our organization. And the biggest focus for us right now, we do have all of our agents are cross-trained across all 3 brands. And it's important because we do have some cross-pollination as far as customers that maybe call in with a Toyota vehicle, but they bought it at our Honda store. And so just being able to be knowledgeable about all 3 of our brands, it really just benefits everyone to learn. And there's so many things that are so similar between the brands that it just makes sense to have everybody doing a little bit of everything and learning about it. But they do a phenomenal job. We handle inbound and outbound phone calls primarily for service, but like I said, also finance, because it oftentimes is a very logical conclusion to go right into a service appointment.
Sarah, we learn so much every time you participate and speak at the Roundtable. You're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much. We're honored to have you. Sarah Vantine from the Scott Clark Auto Group here at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you.
Well, Ted, I'm really excited about this next panel because I'm a trainer. And this is the Fixed Ops Training Panel discussion, and it's sponsored by Fairchild Automotive Solutions.
Gene, you're so right. And, over many years, what you and I have done in facilitating and training and going in dealerships, we decided to hold this panel because I think a lot of folks don't realize or maybe have a grasp of all the preparation that's done prior to going into a dealership. And I want to go ahead and introduce everyone who's going to be appearing here. John Fairchild from Fairchild Automotive Solutions. Welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. We've got Fred Fordin, who's the Vice President of Professional Dealer Services at CDK Global. Len Bucholtz, the Car Biz Coach. Welcome, my friend. Paul Meijer, Master Dealership Trainer. Paul, welcome back. And we have Seana Corsale on the dealership side from Carter Myers Automotive's Colonial Auto Center. So, Seana, welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. All right, so let's get started. John Fairchild, I'll start with you leading off. First of all, what do you do? What's your service? What's your product as a trainer? And then what kind of preparation do you do prior ever going into a dealership?
Well, I appreciate the question, Ted, and it's a very relative question. And thank you for having me here. And basically, what I do is I aim to partner with the dealership to maximize retail growth, profitability, and employee-client satisfaction and experience. Okay, because I firmly believe that employee experience is directly tied to our client experience, and I like to use the terminology of client because that's what they are. We really want to serve them under our care and do the best thing for them. But I've basically got three functions practically with a dealership as far as functionality that occur, and number one is consulting. Just a brief definition of consulting as it applies to me is basically consulting is knowing what to do. It's process development, it's figuring out the plan, it's your strategy, okay? That's really consulting. It's taking what your years of experience have gained you and knowing what to do, and it's not just trial by error. Number two is training. And to a degree, training is learning.
And John, you've got an in-dealership background because you spent a lot of time in dealership working in stores.
Yeah, and man, just to back up a second, you're right. I've been in the car business for 40 years. I started as a cleanup boy, and I've held just about every fixed ops position, and is up to general manager. So I've been a service advisor. I've been a parts guy. I've been a parts manager. I've been a fixed ops director. And so that's where the consulting end of it comes from. Number two, what we do for dealers is really training. And Ted, the distinction of training in a practical function is actually learning what to do, learning what we've consulted about, and also to a large degree, a person trains themselves. So what you do habitually is what you've trained yourself on. And number three is what I do is coaching. So coaching aims to take your training from whatever level it is, let's say it's at good, and make it great. Or if you're already at great, which is usually one of the best places to apply training and coaching to get you greater. So really, those three functions, consulting, training, and coaching is what we do.
Love it. Thank you, John. Fred Fordin over at CDK. What's your product, and how do you and your team prepare before you go in?
Great question, Ted. So, we have the advantage of being a giant, which gives us, a lot of people and a lot of ability to build processes. So at CDK, we have Performance University, which is a training arm that has trained globally. I mean, we've got a master trainer there named John Purdy, who has, he's been in the Middle East, he's been in the Far East, he's been all over Europe and all over the North and South America, training process and procedure. Now that's more of a generalist approach. We have CDK University, which is designed to teach dealerships how to succeed at a higher level with the software that they buy from us. Now, when it comes to pure consulting, our consulting organization is very much the way John just described. It's, the preparation first is let's look at results. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at utilization. Let's look at the whatever it is that we've put in place to measure success. We got to look at that before we go to the store. so that when we get there, we already know what the breakdowns are. Now, the initial visit, of course, is different. And our consulting organization is made up of all specialists. There's no generalists involved. If a guy comes in, he's a parts expert, or he's a service expert, or he's a an F&I expert or an accounting expert. So when we go in, we're going in to attack a very, very particular area of the store and make sure that those processes are either in place and being followed or improved upon, or putting them in place initially. A lot of the larger groups, some of the big enterprise companies bring us in because they know that it's almost impossible for them to monitor and enforce the policies they put in place. But you bring in outsiders who are not employees and who have, kind of the wrath of God in their arm. They can walk in and they can institute what it's hard to institute from an employee. So a lot of different products being brought out.
And Fred, we've got to be able to think on our feet when we get into the store, because so many things can go unexpected during that time. Isn't that right?
Without question. There is not a single consulting visit that you walk in and what you had planned goes exactly the way you planned. I don't think anybody on the phone would disagree with that, on the call would disagree with that. It's just, there are always going to be curveballs thrown at you, and you got to learn to hit them.
I love it. Len Bucholtz, tell us a little bit about what you do, your product, and how you prepare before you even go in.
That's a great question, Ted. I mean, like I've already heard here, a lot of great thoughts on it. Like everybody else, I deliver online and in dealership training focused on fixed ops and, the service drive sales process, CSI, and communications, right? Because that's where we live as far as what we do in our service departments. And I think that, John hit it on the head about the coach part, because that's the part that I love doing the most. Like everybody that's on this call, we're at a point now where we're in it for helping other people. We're not exactly looking at, trying to, I don't know, change the world. What we're trying to do is change one person at a time. Just coach them to a higher performance level. That's what we're looking at doing. And again, like what, Fred and John said, getting ready to go into a dealership, we would be looking at all kinds of different things. I personally like to look at financial statements, wrap reports. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get an idea of not only their performance, but what's their culture, because you can tell a lot, especially if if you see a dealership that's flatlined, right? Everything's the same and every month is the same, a month in, a month out. So, going in there, you're going to have to make some changes in the thinking that's in that dealership to get people to a higher performance level. And that's part of what we do before we go in, part of that prep work.
Len, typically that wrap report, we're able to get that from the service manager quite easily. And we typically can do that in advance as well. But what if you have a dealership or the dealer, who's maybe not willing to share the statement or the appropriate page on the statement with you? I'm sure that's come up.
That's happened before, where they're willing to give you enough to get the information. And what I typically do is just say to them, look, I can help you, but I need a little bit more information to get this thing going. And if I don't have it, I can't really help you. I'll take whatever you're willing to give me. Sometimes it's not just a wrap. It's a 3611, or maybe maybe they're signed up for one of the monitoring fixed operations software that's out there, and you can get access to that. It just depends on the dealership. But I ask. I mean, I'm very come on, man, I need a little bit so I can help you and so I can build and focus a training program that's going to help you. Why do you want me to come in and not have all the information I need to help you?
Fred, I saw you nodding your head. That's happened to you, I imagine.
It's not that it just happened, but the moment a fixed ops director or a service manager doesn't want me to see something, I'm going right to the dealer principal, because we know at that point we have a problem.
Right.
When I've got some, that's like walking into a dealership and saying to the guy, what's your hours per RO? And he tells you 2.53, and you go, wait a minute, you're doing 1,000 express lube a month, and you just didn't count them. What's your hours per RO, right?
We have to count those one line item ROs.
They count.
They count.
Yeah.
Right.
Fred, great point you just made about getting to the dealer principal.
Yes.
Paul Meijer, you and I have done a number of installations together. and follow-ups together. And you know very well, as do I and John Fairchild and everybody on this panel, how important it is to get to that top person. And sometimes, you know, there's a shield or a buffer around that person where, you know, some folks won't let you get there. So anyway, Paul, tell us what's your product and, you know, how do you get started?
All right. So my product is I train service departments. I focus primarily on the service team, that being the service manager or director and the service advisors. And I agree and feel that research up front is the most important part of any training at all. And I start that off with doing an assessment before I get into the dealership, because I need to know what are they doing now to attract customers. And the only way I'm going to do that, and oftentimes I'll be in the parking lot doing a search for the type of services that they do. And from their parking lot, I'm directed a mile or two down the block to some of the other shops that do that kind of repair. So I need to know what they look like to the outside world before I even engage the dealer. Then the next crucial part in the process is to meet with the dealer, because you have to get the dealer's buy-in. I learned a long time ago that unless the dealer is intimately involved, you're going nowhere. And it's very important to find out a few things from the dealer. All right. For one, you need to assess in the dealer's words, what's their current situation? Okay. What are they doing now? What have they done? What have they tried? And what are their goals? What are their expectations from the training? You know, what are they hope at the end of it all? What do they hope to get out of that? And then what type of commitment will I have from the dealer? Now, on some of the training sessions you and I have gone on, Ted, we've had the dealer with us right in the drive at 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, there's no guessing as to what the dealer's commitment is there and what the results are going to be. So once I find out what the expectations are and what the commitment is from the dealer, now I need to know the team. Because if the team is who I'm going to train, I need to know everything about that team that I can know. I need to know their tenure. I need to know their strengths and weaknesses. I need to know their production. Who's producing, who's not producing, who needs more help, who needs less help. I need to know what is one thing that the dealer can compliment them on. Because part of any rapport building is not just going in and saying, hey, you do this bad, you do that bad. A strong part of rapport building is, hey, I understand you used to run a repair shop back in the day. Tell me about that. I ran several repair shops myself in the aftermarket. And then that gives you something to build on for rapport.
Yeah.
Then you look at the reports to see what they're really doing. And because the reason you want to get to know the team is because until you know what they're about and what their communication style is, you won't be able to reach them.
Right.
Everybody communicates differently. So if you're a person that needs to see things in writing to understand, I need to know that in getting to know you. If you're somebody that needs to learn by hands-on, I need to know that also, so that I can tailor my training to each person to reach everybody. And I find that's the best formula for success in training, because if you talk to any dealer, they've gone through a bunch of trainers. What's the common denominator? The people there. So unless you reach them on their level, you can't be as effective.
John, I see you're nodding your head also on that rapport and how important that is.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, you know, obviously, like Paul was alluding to, you got to know what the dealer's prime concern is going into any engagement to be able to address it properly. Okay. And then you can work around any prescriptive solution that you've got in accordance to that. And, you know, like Fred was saying, you do have to pull the data out and crunch it and then kind of verify what's going on the ground to back up what the data says. Absolutely.
Seana, from your perspective, now you're at the dealership world, and you know you've got all these trainers here on the screen with us. What are your expectations that the facilitator should be doing prior to coming into your organization? What are you expecting?
I think everybody hit the nail on the head with research. It's so important to come in and not only understand the numbers, but the dynamic of the service lane or the shop, understand the management style as well. I'm sure you guys can all attest to they're different everywhere that you go. And get buy-in. I think the most important thing on day one is to have the buy-in from not only the dealer, but the service manager, fixed ops director. And you'll have to work a little bit harder to get it from the service advisors. Typically, I would believe, because training is not something that we do one time. Training is something that continues to evolve and that we have to continue to do every single day and commit to. Sometimes we have employees that don't feel they need to be trained, and training is not just for new people. And as the business evolves and everything changes, it's so important for them to buy into that. So having that data and being able to find their strengths and their weaknesses, not just from what we tell you, but from what you can see on paper and from what you observe. I think sometimes we get a little blinded working with people every day that we might think that our best advisor is doing a great job, but you say, hey, look at all this opportunity that they have. Right. So I don't think we bring trainers in to fix things, but to maximize our potential. And it's something that needs to be sustainable too. I think it's really important to find a path to sustainability with training as well. How is this training for 1 week going to last us?
Yes.
6 months, a year, maybe till the next visit, and make sure that it's making a big impact on us, on our day-to-day operations.
Seana, I'm going to ask the trainers on here, what's one of the first things they look for when they arrive at the dealership? But from your perspective, what are your expectations when the facilitator arrives at the dealership? What are you expecting from them? What kind of are the cues that tell you this is going to go really well this week or otherwise?
I think a big kickoff meeting is always good, to get everybody excited, have that excitement there, explain why you're there, what you're going to do. Of course, keep everything positive. Nobody wants you to come in and say, hey, you guys are having problems, I'm here to fix them. Hey, I'm your coach. It's just like a sports event. You're here to coach them through something. And, clearly as on a dealer level, we invested money to have you come in and do this. So we see value in it. Like you guys said too, it's important for that dealer to be there, whoever the point of contact is that brought the training in, to really stand beside you and say, we brought this person here, this is what we believe in. So that's important on our end, but also to just have that togetherness when we present everything to the employees. And like I said, I would like the employees to have the sense of partnership with the trainer. It's not that someone's coming in there to change things, because I think employees go through enough change as it is. Everything's constantly changing, especially through COVID too. But to just understand that you guys are their partner. You're there to help them grow, and eventually that'll show in their paychecks and in their lives. And really, you're going in there and changing their lives. And it's important for them to know that.
Okay, excellent. First thing you look for when you go into a dealership, and let me kind of tell my own quick story here before I ask John. I was doing an installation, Fred, in Staten Island, New York at Dana Ford Lincoln. Jim Cognetta is the dealer principal. And it was a 4-day installation. And I got there on the first morning, Len, and the dealership opens at 7:30 for service. So, of course, I got there early. I got there about 6:45. And I saw that they had the gate closed outside the dealership, and there was a line of cars going down the street, about 30 cars. And this was 45 minutes before the dealership even opened. And by 7:30, you can imagine when they opened how long that line was at that time. And so the first thing I noticed, because the dealer said to me, where do you think we should start? I said, you're opening too late. You got to open the doors early. So that week, the dealership changed its hours of operation to write-up service, not for the technicians. But when the technicians arrived, now the cars were already in the stalls waiting for them, and they opened the dealership at 7 a.m. now. So that was one of the first things I noticed. John, what are you looking for when you go in the store?
Well, on a typical engagement, Ted, and that's a very good point. I've got just a quick little story. I got a dealer here locally, and I actually worked for this guy for about 10 years. He's got a huge jumbo screen that counts down when the drive opens, man, and they actually do have cars lined out to the street. But I mystery shop a dealer in 3 ways before I ever arrive. Number one is on the internet. Okay, so I try to set an appointment and go through the process that way. I look at their specials, look at the general layout. I look and see if their personnel page is updated, etc. And I also phone shop them. So whether they've got a BDC or not, I make several calls that are mystery shop in the service department. And then I'll actually bring my car in unannounced. I don't want anybody to know who I am before I arrive, except for maybe the management if they're involved in it. And I do an actual mystery shop as a customer. And so I get in that drive with a similar product, and it may be a rental product, but I get the manufacturer's product and actually do a mystery shop physically. And generally what I'm looking for is in two different categories. Number one is I'm looking for a caring staff. Okay. I'm looking for somebody that greets you well, that is there to build rapport. Okay. That's number one. So I'm paying attention to that very strongly. Number two, what I'm actually looking for is the existence of an actual service advising process in our key advising situations. Number one is at write-up. Are they actually advising me at write-up and making presentations to me and letting me decide whether I want to buy something? But are they asking? Number two is, related to the multiple inspection. And if I'm in a wait or maintenance situation, what happens post-inspection? Is there an existence of a service advising process, a service selling process, if you want to put it that way, and how do they go through that? So really, I want to focus on it through the eyes of a customer and really base any of my recommendations that I've already pretty much preconceived based on the data. Now, how can I really put it together for the dealer and make some very concise things, not a bunch of things to throw at them, but what are 3 things that we can execute that will improve the process, perhaps, because we all know that execution is key. Strategy is critical, but are we actually executing? That's what I'm looking for.
Great information, John. Powerful stuff. Fred, what's one of the first things you and your team are looking for when you arrive?
There's a number of things that get here. I love John's answer. With a team my size, we don't have that luxury of getting there early enough to rent a car and do all that. So we're heavily reliant on the data. However, walking through the front door versus coming in the back door, the entrance of a training team is really important. We learned that long ago, whether you're training a piece of software or you're coming in to train process and procedure, you got to come through the front door. You got to look like the A-team. You got to be able to walk in and have people make a judgment based on first impression. Now, beyond that, what are they looking for? It's all about processes. If you ask a guy who used to be in the restaurant business, if he actually enjoys himself when he goes out to dinner, most of the time you're going to get, I can enjoy the food, but God, I pick everything apart. And it's the same thing walking into a dealership. Regardless of how many years I've been away from working in a store, if I walk in, I automatically see everything that's wrong. That's the first thing I notice. And I know all of my people, voice exactly the same thing. So walking in, to a service department, very much the things John said, how are the advisors or the greeters greeting the customers? How long is a customer actually sitting or standing by his car when he pulls in before someone approaches him? Because you take that from 30 seconds to 4 minutes and you've completely changed the attitude of the customer. There's all kinds of just basic things that we all know that get dropped on a daily basis. And so, we initially begin to look for all those things. Listening for a phone. How long is that damn phone ringing? Oh my God. On the 4th ring, I'm like, somebody pick up the phone already. The customer's going to hang up and call someone else.
Right.
So it's the simple things first that we look for.
And to your point, Fred, are there even phones ringing, or has the dealer already made that a seamless process where you don't have to hear that phone ringing? I was told by the person who taught me how to be a trainer, Fred, that when you go into the dealership for the first time, you got to walk in like you own the place. And that front door entrance, I think, is absolutely key. You're right. You're spot on with that, Fred. I love it. I love all that. Len, you've been in a lot of installations. We were just talking recently about some that you did. What are you looking for when you get in the store first?
I totally agree with these gentlemen, man. They nailed it right on the head. There's all those things that we're looking for when we walk in, right? So, you know, on the first day, I'm just looking to see what they know. I'm standing back. I'm just watching their process. And like John, I like to walk in unannounced and just kind of look around, see what people are doing. I've been known to sit out in the parking lot for a little while and watch the process of the cars going in and out. How long does it sit there before someone goes to the front of the car and say hello to the customer? I mean, these are all things that we're doing. We're just gathering information because we want to see, what is the customer's experience? Are they getting the full, you know, dealership experience, or are they getting something else? And that's what we're looking for. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for, and to John's point, that friendly, caring greeting is so important. Right now, I think that a lot of times we miss that opportunity, and advisors walk up and they're like grunting. They grunt like orcs, you know, when they're talking to the customer. And the customer's like, okay. And then they just walk away from the car and expect the customer to follow them. So, you know, it's like, we got to get rid of that. We got to do a friendly greeting. We got to do a walk around, you know, all these things that make a difference in the service drive sales process. And to Seana's point, none of us want to walk in and start pointing fingers. That is absolutely the worst thing to do, right? What we want to do is just show the opportunity. Where can we help you grow? Where can we help you change? What is it that we noticed? Here's what I see right here. Here's what I think we can do, those types of things, right? Because if me or John or Ted or anybody else walks in, or Paul, and says, oh, you guys are screwed up here. Oh, that's a mess. Oh, I can't believe you guys are doing that. It's over. They're not going to listen to you anymore after that. It's done.
Len, great points. Paul, I remember when you and I were up at DePaula Chevrolet in Albany, New York. I remember one of the first things you did was you counted off, and you took a video of it with your feet, the stopping distance based on the tread of the vehicle, you know, green, yellow, red. And you counted off the number of steps how much longer it would take to stop that vehicle. And you did a great visual for everybody at the dealership. And that was very instrumental in a lot of tires being sold during that time while we were there. So what do you look for when you go into the store?
Well, what I look for is readiness and preparedness, right? That's crucial. So before going in, I make a service appointment because I want to see what's the process. Some people have this down to a science. They've got text, they've got voice, and they've got email confirmations. Others have none. Others have a simple email confirmation. That's it. Well, guess what? A lot of those go into spam. So you have no confirmation as a customer, and you have no confirmation before you go in. So now you have, let's say you miss a service appointment. Am I going to get a call right away? Or is it at the end of the day when you can't do anything about it? You know, these are all missed opportunities. So in readiness and appearance, like most of the guys here, I go in early. If I know they open at a certain hour, I go ahead of time because I want to see what's the climate. Are there a lot of people waiting for the same reasons that you do? Maybe we need to adjust something. When the doors open, are they ready to go? Do you have a smiling team that approaches it very much like a pit stop type environment? You know, we're all impressed when we look at auto racing and we see pit stops where the entire team digs in and they get that car up on the ramps, they get it fixed, tuned, tweaked, and back on the road to win the race, right? You're, as a dealership, they're in a race also. So do they have a porter that's coming up to the people one at a time? Or do they have a smiling team that greets them? Then, do they do a walk around? Crucial. Do they have a machine that checks the tire condition and or alignments? And furthermore, do they share that information with the client? Because it does no good to have the tool if you're not going to use it. Do they have any kind of information to put me at ease? If I'm coming in for a particular service, are they more expensive than the other 3 places nearby or not? So a menu board that features the pricing, some dealers do this brilliantly. Their price is not the lowest, right? Just because you have a board with pricing, a menu, doesn't mean you have to be the lowest. If you sell the value of the factory trained technicians, the convenience, the investment you make in your facility to better service your clients, they'll pay more money. you can go up to 100 people and ask them, would you pay more money for better quality and service? And I think that the majority, at least 99.9% of them would agree. I've actually asked that question of people. Do they sell tires? Do I see any tires, right? Do they have any type of point of sale material? So these are all things that are critical to observe, because it isn't until you know what their process is that you know where you can help them improve. Right. And by observing the walk around, the battery inspections, the tire inspections, like, let's face it, there's only a handful of things to service on cars today. And you can tell within 5 minutes of standing in the drive whether or not they're capturing that business. And I'm in agreement with all of the trainers here that your job is not to go in and say, you stink at this or you stink at that. Your job is, if they're not doing walk-arounds, if they're not doing tire inspections, you might say, hey, how are your tire sales? You know, what are you trending? What have you done in the past? What are your goals? How about battery sales? Do you sell many batteries? You know, by doing the observing and asking the questions as how it relates to them rather than pointing the finger, you can paint the picture of, and they'll paint the picture themselves. You know what? We're not doing inspections, and yeah, we're not doing as many tires. Maybe we want to win back some of that 70% that goes to the aftermarket. So by rephrasing it as an opportunity as opposed to an accusation, I think those are key elements to gain their trust and their buy-in, because all of those things are needed in order for you to go forward.
Love it. You know, Gene, I remember, you know, going back some time that you and I would look at the appearance of the facility as one of the first things when we would go into a dealership. And just, you know, thinking back to this morning when Ed Roberts announced, we had the grand opening at Bozard Ford Lincoln in St. Augustine, and we were there. And Gene, you and I had a chance to see that facility as well as the audience. And I mean, what's the impression there, right? To everybody on that grand scale on what they've done, you know, with 88 technicians and 98 bays and, you know, great stuff. So I want to thank the panel. I want to thank John Fairchild, Seana Corsale. I want to thank Fred Fordin, Paul Meijer, Len Bucholtz. Great job. Gene, we're going to have to bring everybody back. This wasn't enough time.
Yeah, this was awesome. Well, Ted, what an awesome job you did there moderating that panel, and what a great group of experts we had on the Fixed Ops training panel. And we're not stopping there. We've got another great expert joining us right now.
Yes, Katie Mears is coming in, and Katie is the Chief Marketing Officer at Permashield, and she's also a customer experience expert. This is Katie's 4th Fixed Ops Roundtable. She's a published author. And Katie Mears, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you for having me. Every time I get that text message from you saying, hey, would you like to be a part of this? I get so excited. So thank you for being one of my biggest fans so that I can in turn help share knowledge.
Absolutely. And our audience is really excited about the message you're going to deliver today. So Katie, take it away.
All right, so we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. Many of you know me as a customer experience expert. You may know me as somebody who's super passionate about the female consumer. But what I don't talk a lot about, which I've done a ton of research on, is the actual female employee. And the one thing in automotive is that I'd say 90% of all the executives in automotive are men. And unfortunately, even in today's day and age, we're having a terrible time at attracting, hiring, and retaining women. And women want to do business where they can see themselves in the business. And automotive has a really hard time capturing the hearts and minds of the world's most influential consumer because they're having a hard time capturing the hearts and minds of their own female employee base. So I thought I'd take this segment, which I've never done with the Fixed Ops Roundtable, to talk about how we can attract, hire, and retain females. So let's get started. First of all, I have a huge belief that if women don't want to work for you, they're not going to want to shop with you. And so there's a direct correlation in customer experience in general. Your happiest customer is only as happy as your happiest employee, Well, women, as I mentioned in my introduction, is that women want to do business where they can see themselves in. So if they can't walk into a dealership and see that it is a place where women want to work, their guard is going to go up and they're not going to want to shop with you. So it's really important to fix that internal culture, to take it into today's day and age and really promote women so that you can win the hearts and minds of the female consumer. So I'm going to give you 7 steps in my quick 15-minute spiel on how you at your dealership can actually increase the amount of potential you have to attract women, because that's the first step. They've got to want to even apply and call you, to hire them, because past the interview, they've got to say yes. They've got to actually sign on the dotted line. And then where the going gets really tough is how you retain them. And we have a really hard time in the automotive industry to actually retain these women. So number 1, you have to accept that women are different than men, period. And that's okay. I believe that we were put on this earth as men and women to help each other out. And a man's skill set is very different than a woman's skill set, and we need to accept that physiologically we are different. Women feel more, they're better at creating those connections, those emotional connections. They care about those emotional connections. They care about the hedonic atmosphere, where a man is very transactional. Their limbic brain, a woman's limbic brain is, if you've ever seen any of my talks, you've heard this a million times, but it is double the size of a man's. So a man doesn't feel as much. The other thing is that women actually communicate with both sides of their brain. So they communicate with logic and they communicate with creativity. Men are very logical, A to Z. They want a very utilitarian experience, both in work and as a customer. And so we need to recognize the fact that men and women are different. And it's not a bad thing. I think it's awesome if you can embrace that. Then you're able to work to each of the gender's strengths. And when you can work to each of the gender's strengths, then you are actually getting the best out of your employees, and you can capture all types of customers. So number 1, you need to accept that women are different than men and that it is okay. Second, you want to decide and make this decision that diversity is important. So we talk about women and men, but diversity, it spans a whole bunch of different, whether it's race, gender, religion. Diversity has to be important to you. If diversity isn't important to you, then the rest of this talk is not for you. Because if you don't make that decision that it's important, then you're never going to actually action anything to make a change. Diversity has to become the number 1 initiative in order to make it actually come to life. Without actively striving for this change, if it isn't important to you as a leader or a brand, everything else will fall through the cracks. And it won't be to the fault of anybody, not your team, not the programs you put in place, but it will be the fault of the leader and the brand because you've decided to not pay attention to it. What gets measured gets managed. Well, if diversity is not something we speak about, if the importance of having female employees and more equality in the dealership is not something we talk about all the time, then it is going to fall through the cracks. So I urge you, make the decision that it is important, because if you make that decision, you're going to strive to make the difference. Number 3, so if the brand believes in it and you as leaders believe in it and you've decided that this is going to be the thing that you focus on, diversity and equality is the thing that you're going to focus on, well, you got to get everyone else to buy in. So we need to make sure that the fee plus male, so female, the equality, is something that everybody believes in. We are in the automotive industry a bit of an uphill battle, right? Because you have, the old dogs, teaching old dogs new tricks is not necessarily easy. And it's really hard to get some of those sales folks and, those in fixed ops, service advisors and technicians to really buy into the fact that, I don't know, a woman could be a service advisor, or that she might be really good at getting other women to say yes. It's really, really important that your entire team is on board, that you're on the boat rowing in the right direction. You've got the right person on the right seat on the bus so that we can actually make that difference. Because otherwise, as a leader and a brand, you will feel like you're hitting your head against a wall. Then in order to make sure that that sustains, you may have to make some difficult choices. So in order to get complete employee buy-in, that means you may have to remove those who don't buy in. You have to make sure that you fill and surround everyone, your entire team in the dealership, with the opportunity to thrive and grow and be a part of this change. We can't just sweep things under the rug and hope that somebody is not going to, or is going to turn around and actually buy in. We need to make those swift decisions when we have given them the right opportunity. One way, or three ways I should say, to really help employees buy in is, number one, talk about it. If you are not sick of hearing your voice, at the end of the day, you haven't talked enough. Share stories. Storytelling is the glue, like conversations, that connect us all together. Sharing stories actually allows you and your team to have a shared experience. It allows your team members to have shared experiences together. When you share stories of success, when you share stories of how a woman has had success in the industry, it allows them to put themselves in your shoes and in your experience. And it allows them to connect the dots on their own. So you're dictating less, and you're having them actually experience it more, and they are making their own decision. And last but not least, talk some more. So as I said, if you are not sick of hearing your own voice, by the end of the day, you haven't spoken enough. So talk, share, and let them know how important it is to you. Number 4, now, this is where the rubber hits the road. How are women going to starting to be attracted to maybe even consider working at your dealership? Well, you're going to have to start rethinking the old way of doing business and the benefits that you offer. The number one excuse I hear from women as to why they don't love working at a dealership is the whole, you must be able to work bell to bell, right? You must be able to work open to close. And while there are actually quite a few up-and-coming dealerships that are progressive and are doing shift work and clienteling and making it easier for individuals to actually be in automotive, it is really important that you rethink the benefits that are not just beneficial to men, but are also beneficial to women. If she's a mom, she should still have equal opportunity and feel like she can have a thriving career in the automotive industry at a dealership. And so it's important that you actually provide benefits to her that make sense and allow her to be a whole human, to work in an industry that is awesome, but allows her to thrive at home and within her profession. Here are some things you're going to want to consider. Again, I mentioned the bell to bell. Does it really have to be that? Can you consider flexible work hours, increased personal days, contribution to kids' colleges, career advancement? Make a roadmap so she knows she can grow and that she's not stuck at the reception desk or at, in the BDC. On-site childcare. If you've got something big enough and you can actually, when the going gets tough and you need to bring a child in, let's bring them in. And of course, women's groups. Giving women an opportunity to come together and share what they love or what they'd want to change, and then actually listening to that feedback, giving them an opportunity to grow and develop as a strong group of women. Which leads me right into my next point. Point number 5, create a supportive culture. We have to support the women that we hire. If we don't support them and they feel alienated, they will walk out of that door just as quickly as they've walked in. And not only are you damaging your reputation, because women will talk about it, they will share their stories, and you'll have a harder time attracting, hiring, and retaining women. But you're also going to ruin the culture for the rest of the employees because they're going to remember it And they're going to think that maybe, just maybe, you don't actually mean what you say. You're not practicing what you preach. So you really, truly need to create this supportive culture. Give your female employees an outlet to speak up without repercussions. So that's that women's group, that benefit of having all your women come together and to actually be heard. So as a customer experience expert, I often talk about this one sort of rule of thumb. It takes 12 positive interactions to make up for just one negative interaction. And we have this zero balanced trust account where every woman that comes on is saying, I'm giving you trust. And it's up to us to put positive deposits into this trust account. Because if you don't have a supportive culture, if you don't give her the ability to speak up when she's asked, or when she's not asked, just to share and air her thoughts, her feelings, and communicate, then she'll, as I said, walk out as quickly as she's walked in. Now, I know I'm getting really close to the end and I want to make sure that we stay on time. So number 6, now this is a big one. You have to make sure you review your job descriptions. And there's a huge reason why. So I was doing some studies and I was looking at, in some research and looking at why women don't actually want to apply into a dealership. So now this is what I found, which I think is, it's crazy. But if you look at a list of requirements, men actually will say yes to a job if they fit about 60% of the items that are listed. Women will only feel confident enough to apply if they meet 100% of the qualifications, which means you need to review your job description so they are female friendly, so that they actually think that they can do the job. That's the first hurdle to get her to apply. Number 7, get women to share their stories. So we talked about sharing stories and communicating to get your team bought in. If you have women in your dealership that love working for you, women will apply and want to work in businesses when they can see themselves working in the business and see happy women working in the business. So make sure you get your women to share their stories and connect with the women. It's a killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're going to attract female customers as well as potential female employees. And at the end of it all, I really just want you to imagine a world of diversity within your dealership. I mean, imagine what it would be if you could have your 2 genders, men and women, really accepting the fact that you're different and it's okay, and having them work together. Make that your world, so that she feels comfortable fitting in to your world. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Katie Mears here at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks, Katie. And Ted, we have an amazing panel still coming up. We've got the Best Practice Award still coming up. And then we're going to talk about what's next for the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Don't go away.
Hello, it's Dr. Phil here. And look, I hope you've learned by now that you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. And if it's not working for you, you must have to be willing to step outside yourself and say, how did I get outside myself? No, what I'm doing is not working. But I'm here to tell you what will work is Tully Williams, and it's all about the hours panel, followed by our Best Practice Award winners and a few special surprises. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable, everyone. I'm Gene Girdley along with Ted Ings, and this is one of the panels that I personally have been waiting for a long time, and it's hosted by none other than Tully Williams.
How you doing, Gene?
I'm doing great, man.
Ted, thanks again for joining us. It's all about the hours, isn't it?
Tully, I can't believe it. We've had such an amazing day. We've heard from so many amazing presenters, and now Tully is going to bring us home and tell us who you got on the panel, Tully.
I am super excited today. You know, it's all about the hours. And I said, I want the 3 best people here to talk about hours and how they are making it happen at their stores and functions. So here we go. First up, I got Mike talking about customer relationships, customer retention. It's all about repeat and referral. Next to my man, Ed, with the biggest shop on the East Coast, talking about 2-man teams and how to make it happen. Followed up by Tom talking about how do we stop wasting technicians' times? I'm going to follow up about forecasting and pay plans. We're going to show you how to make more hours for your technicians in shop. Super pumped, Ted.
Tully, I can't wait. All right. All right, you bring the juice. Go ahead.
All right, here we go. Mike, you know, I am super excited to have you on. You know, when you talk about customer retention, you know, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Repeat and referral business. And tell us, how does that make us more hours in our shop?
Well, Tully, I'm here to rattle a few cages because you and I and Ed and numerous other people circle around to producing more hours in a different aspect. We don't necessarily look at hours per RO. We don't necessarily look at effective labor rate. Do we look at effective labor rate? Yeah, but do we make it our #1 priority? No, we don't, because we want to produce as many hours in the shop. And obviously, common sense tells us that if we're going to produce more hours, we need more customers. We need to retain more customers. We need increased RO count. And so if you're focused strictly on hours per RO, if you're focused strictly on effective labor rate, you're probably going to chase away a good amount of customers. Not to mention, both those numbers can be manipulated. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for our technicians. It's not a good thing for our customers. So, you know, when I look at retention in relation to hours, I want to talk about things like oil changes that we typically at the dealership level don't always do a great job of. And the #2 thing is we don't always do a great job selling tires. And if we want to look at defection points in the dealership business, those are probably your 2 biggest items, period, hands down. So, and some of the reasons are, obviously, we don't focus on the customer experience. So we don't put a lot of priority on your oil changes. We don't put a lot of trust and value into selling tires to them so that they come back and do business with us. And, you know, also we don't look at those items typically because we've been preached for the last 20+ years that get high effective labor rate, get high hours per RO. Well, I'm here to say different. If you look at a lot of OEMs these days, what do they include in their maintenance packages nowadays before 100,000 miles? Not a hell of a lot. So why are we so driven on hours per RO? Let's get that customer with the oil change done, and maybe next time he's going to need brakes, or next time he's going to need an alignment, or tires, or oil repairs, or a water pump, whatever it is. But we need that customer coming back. And you know, we typically in the dealership side of the business lose about 70% of our customers by the time they get to 30, 40,000 miles. How much opportunity could we create if we had more customers coming back to us? If we took that 30% retention and we increased it to 40%, how much would that relate to in RO count? And RO count translates into hours. Hours translates into dollars. Dollars translates into gross profit, and gross profit turns into net and fixed absorption. And that's what we're here for every day. So, you know, that's my takeaway for this event. Stop focusing on the numbers so closely and focus on the customer experience and driving things that are going to keep your customers coming back long term. You know, I come from the Toyota background, and typically, you know, until you get over 60,000 miles, there's not a lot to do on those cars. So unless I have volume coming through my drive, how am I going to make this happen? How am I going to produce enough hours to make it profitable for the dealership? why don't we look at it like the variable side now? Don't sales departments have to hit manufacturer objectives to hit their bonus money? Okay, well, guess what? We need to do oil changes and tire sales to hit our objective of more RO count for next month, next year, 5 years down the road. And it's funny because Tully and I had a conversation recently about a gentleman by the name of Randy Brinkman. And we both had the aha moment from Randy's teachings. Mine was at a Toyota meeting. And so let me leave you with this. You've got a technician number one that's producing 9 hours a day at $100 effective labor rate. You've got technician number two producing 12 hours a day at $90 effective labor rate. Which one would you rather have? Last time I checked, 3 more hours a day is going to produce a lot more sales, a lot more gross, and a lot more net. So should I be upset that I'm not at 100 and I'm only at 90? No, because my bottom line is looking much, much better. So let's leave with, put your focus on the customer experience, make sure that we give them a reason to come back, and put your focus on big defection points. You know, one other thing I didn't bring up was the industry says that 70% of our customers that buy their tires elsewhere are not coming back to our dealership. So can we afford to give away 70% of our business when we start out with 100%? It's just ridiculous. And so retention plays a huge effect on the hours.
Mike, that is incredible. You know, it's so funny that we talked about our good friend Randy that talked about the hours as, you know, I hate to admit it, I was a grocer back in the, you know, long time ago. But, you know, he said, hey, talk about the hours, and boom, did it explode. You know, and my good friend David over at Tire Profiles, you know, what did he talk about tires? Tires is the first defection point, spot on. And if we are truly in the repeat and referral business, I hate to say 20 groups, you got it wrong. Hours per RO, that's off the table, because maintenance and tires does what? It drives all the matrix down, which goes against everything they preach. But if we lose those customers, we lose overall, to your point. So, you know, guys and gals out there, we need to make it happen. We need to work on retention, and then retention brings the hours to the store.
Hey, Tully, Mike did such a great job. Mike, you make it, it's such common sense the way you explain it. Tully, you got such great presenters. Over your right-hand shoulder, what's that little yellow guy with the sunglasses, and it kind of looks like you? Is that you?
That's my emojis. Some good friends made some emojis for me, and I thought, you know, I put them up on the wall just to make it exciting.
Do the panelists get that, or the top panelist gets one of those emojis?
I need to do that.
We've been talking about that.
All right, Ted, thanks so much. Next up, my good friend Ed from the East. Wow, are you excited about your grand opening down there, Ed? I'm super pumped for you, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it. But wow, 2-man teams, you are making it happen. And, you know, to Mike's point, you are all about the maintenance on the Ford quick lane, aren't you?
Absolutely. So, yes, we got a lot of stuff happening here today. Our grand opening is going on. I'm glad I was able to step in here and join you guys. But Mike touched on a lot of things that really drives this business. And we try to make an oil change an experience. And we run the highest volume quick lane in the country. And we have for the last 6 years. And not only is it the highest volume quick lane in the country, but it's one of the highest volume tire dealers for Ford in the country. So the defection points is certainly that. It's the convenient points of servicing, getting your oil change done, getting the maintenance stuff to keep it going. And then tires, you can see. Customers don't typically look at them, but they can go look at them if they want to, but they can't see the brakes and the condition of the battery. And if you touch all 3 of those things, they are needed at points when customers defect. They are needed at the point that the vehicle is going out of warranty. We've owned it up to that point because they're not going to take it somewhere else when they don't have to pay for it. But when they do, they have a choice. And if we don't hit those points leading up to that and allow them to prepare for it, then we're not going to retain them. And our quick lane, we've made it an experience to get service done by concentrating on what's most important to our customers, and that's their time. So we put together 2-man teams over there several years ago, and really continued to enhance that. And it's grown into the main shop. And I got 2-man teams. It's mandatory in quick lane. It's optional in the main shop. But in quick lane, we're turning customers' cars around with a quality inspection, a rotation of the tires, and oil change. topping off all fluids, wash and a vac in about 17 minutes. And that is unheard of at some of the drive up, never get out of your car places as well. As we're cooking cookies in there. So there's the aroma inside the lounge as well, cook cookies for people to have. We make an experience out of it. Thus, we hold 74.9% retention. And dealers like to chase that. But ultimately, it's done by getting rid of those pinch points. It really takes time out of the equation, or takes time away from our customers. And we expect, a lot of times you go in the service department and think, well, I got them out of here in an hour. I don't know what their issue is. Well, an hour's too long. I mean, think about the peak times when people come in and get their vehicle service. It's usually at break or at lunch or whatever. And there's commute time to get back and forth and to get the car serviced. Now you've made them 30 minutes late getting back to work. They're not necessarily happy with you. We think we did everything we could to get them out in an hour. It doesn't work. So we've really broke the two-man team down into a process to where these guys dance around this vehicle. They're talking to each other, telling each other drain plug's tight, this is that, oil's topped off, coolant's topped off, checking lights as it comes in. Those technicians, because they're that efficient, working together, I don't have to have valets in quick lane. They wash the car, they vacuum the car as a team. One takes it to the car wash while the other one goes and gets the next car, and they meet back at it and checking lights. And it's about working together as a team. And when you do that, it builds its own culture. And any of you guys that's heard me talk about very much, you know that we're a culture-driven store, and it really ties into it. And before we expanded into what we're opening up today, although I've had my shop open for a little bit in the Lincoln building, but before we expanded into this, we was working 2 shifts and still scheduling customers 3 weeks out. So we integrated two-man teams into the shop and made our guys more effective. We got 2 brains working on a vehicle to diagnose it. They can earn additional bays. They each get a bay. If they're over 150% productive, they can earn a 3rd bay. So that's keeping the bays at production, and that's what we look at is how productive is the bays. Because if the bays are productive, then the technicians are productive as well. You got double the experience. If you got a 20-year guy looking at a vehicle, he's still gonna get stumbled from time to time. But if you got 2 guys there and they're bouncing things off of each other, now you got 35 years of experience looking at that vehicle and figuring things out. But it takes, you have to put some effort into that, because you can't just put 2 people together and say, hey, you guys are gonna work together, you're gonna split hours, you're gonna do this. It takes the right personalities, and they have to, it's just like husband and wife. You don't take the same 2 people and put them together. There's gotta be some differences there where you complement each other. So it's about pairing the right personalities together. But when you do that, it continues to compound itself. I have a pair of technicians out there that typically run about 230% productive day in and day out. And it's not because they're shortchanging anything or overselling things. It's because they're efficient. The guys are going to the parts department and getting parts for multiple vehicles. I still rather them not go to parts department, but those are things that we all struggle with changing, but we make it more effective for them. They got one guy may be better at diagnosing, another guy may be better at keeping things moving or whatever else. So when you pair the right things together and allow them to complement off each other, it just really continues to compound. And when you do that, it creates the culture that you want, creates the camaraderie, communication's there, and production goes through the roof. And I think that's what pays the bills.
You know, Ed, I've always heard about the 2-man team on the maintenance side, but when you talked about the 2-man team and the repair side, I'm like, wow, is that a concept? And then how hard was that to convince technicians this was going to be a good thing, to pool their hours together, I assume, and then work together to generate even more hours?
It would have been a tougher sell if they hadn't seen it in person, but we do a lot of training videos here for Ford Motor Company. So there's been a lot of publicity with the 2-man teams over in Quick Lane. So just highlighting some of those things that really made those efficient, made several of the guys want to try it. And still, I have several people. I only have about 60% of my guys in the main shops working on 2-man teams because you still got the others that feel like they're the best. And I'm fine with that. They do a great job and they keep things moving. But the guys that have learned to lean on each other and really support each other, it becomes easier to turn those hours. And they're not going home as taxed as they normally would. And it really extends their career out a little bit. But having the piece to fall back on in Quick Lane really allowed us to sell it. And when we really tightened things up and had several shifts and had 1 person per bay, selling them on the idea that 2 of you, if you're 100%, 150% productive, that's 300% amongst the 2. You can have that 3rd bay, and to give them that extra bay at the time that we didn't have bays is what helped sell it as well. That is really, because with the extra bay, they can, have that diagnosis. And is there certain techs that you think work better? Is it diag techs, or is it repair techs, or is it everything? It doesn't really matter. each team has its own dynamic. In Quick Lane, it's different because there's A tech and there's B tech, and they all got their responsibilities. That's where they get introduced to it. But in the main shop, each team has its own dynamics, and one guy may be better at diagnosing, and we don't shift work around to specialists. Everybody does everything, but one guy may get better at diagnosing these areas. The other guy may be better at diagnosing this area. I have one team, my most productive team. One guy does all the diagnosing. He does all the test drives to verify the fix, and the other guy's just a machine. He never goes to parts department. He's just there going. So he doesn't ask questions. They get moved to the next vehicle. There's the stuff there. He does ask questions. Anything I need to know about this? Nope. Put that stuff on. You're good. So he keeps right on rolling. Each team has its own dynamic. I can't say that this is what each one of them ends up being, because they all kind of create what works for them.
You know, that is just incredible. I think that I think the husband and wife analogy was the best. If those guys can sync, can you imagine a diag and a machine working next to each other and they combo? I mean, that is just incredible. And, you know, one guy is better at the other and they accept that and just love it. That is just a huge deal. Ed, incredible what you're doing down there. Congratulations on your grand opening today.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and still got several hours to go. We're going to be here.
All right, next up, Tom. Wow, you know, reducing waste is amazing. And as we look at the hour savings and you generate by how much gross you miss out, it's just tremendous. So I'm really looking forward to what are you doing to reduce waste that generates more hours in the shop?
Well, Tully, it really is staggering when you start to put some math behind the numbers, and what one actual hour means to your shop and it means to the store every day. So if you take one technician, let's say for easy round numbers, you know, you're $100 an hour effective labor rate and you're 70% gross. So it gives you $70 an hour gross profit per technician hour. We have to remember that parts are tied to that. And again, easy math, let's say 1-to-1. And at 35% gross on parts, it gives you about $105 per hour in total fixed gross. And that's not including supplies, anything along those lines, if your state allows you to bill for supplies. So at 10 techs per day, that's just over $1,000, $1,050 per day in a shop of 10 technicians in a regular size shop. So if we, again, easy numbers, 21 days we'll use for a month. Not all stores run full shops on Saturdays. So you're $22,000 a month in fixed gross, or annualized is about $265,000, just shy of that. So a larger store, 20 techs, double it. You know, you're over $500,000 a year in fixed gross just by giving your technicians the ability back to turn that additional hour. So for me, the one of the things that we do within our group is we look at the areas where we have the biggest bottlenecks. You have all that work filtering in, but there's going to be natural choke points where it just slows down and comes to a halt. Biggest area that we found is parts department. And Ed, you mentioned it. You know, you hate your guys going to the parts counters. Fixed Ops magazine a while back had said that on average it's 10 to 15 minutes that a technician loses every time they go to the parts counter. So again, you know, let's extrapolate that throughout the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, and think about the amount of time that is lost by those technicians. And when it boils down to it, that's our, in service at least, that's our only inventory. We buy time from our technicians and we sell it to our customers. And every 6 minutes that inventory expires. We never ever get it back. We don't have the ability. So if your technicians are spending time at parts counters and they're spending time waiting for approvals, it's just wasted time. It's just hours out the window. So how do we get it back? For us, one of the biggest things has been the use of an electronic multi-point. You know, the old days was the technician fills out the multi-point, they go over to the parts counter, they get their estimate, they take all that paperwork, they walk back over to the service desk, they give it to the service advisor, they go back to their box. You know, if you put some red paint on the bottom of your technician's shoes, we always joke about the spaghetti that it creates all around the shop. So let's remove the spaghetti, right? Using the electronic multi-point tool allows your technicians to, at their box, go through, they check out the vehicle, they make all the notes, they can easily review the multi-point from the last time it was in so that they know if there's anything that was recommended at that time. but then electronically it sends the estimate to the parts counter, the estimate request. Parts counter has the ability to look up the parts, sends it to the advisor, who can then, you know, sell the work, thumbs up, thumbs down, send it back to the technician. Technician never has to leave their bay. They can continue working, they can drain oil, they can rotate tires, they can do the things that were already approved on that repair order without the back and forth, without starting to lose that time, just wasting going, again, standing at a parts counter. It also allows some benefits to your parts employees, as they're not bogged down with 10 different technicians standing there, but really the amount of time that it saves your technicians is phenomenal. On top of that, if you are, again, traditional model, service advisor gets the repair order, they call the customer, right? Usually you got to leave a message, and you can wait 10, 20, 30 minutes more waiting for that return phone call from the customer to authorize the work. Texting tools. If your advisors are not using a texting tool, that's really the way that the customers now want us to communicate with them. That's the easiest way. Even like right now, I'm doing this. If I get a text, I can easily respond. 2 seconds, send it back. Phone call, I can't take it. So we have found that through using a texting tool, more than 50% of the time, we have an answer from a customer in less than 5 minutes. 1 to 5 minutes is the average time it takes for a customer to get back to a service advisor with either an answer on what they're looking for, or yes, I'm available for a service call, or I won't be available for a call until this time, in which case, again, we can get our technicians moving. So those two things really for us have been key in getting those hours back to our technicians, giving them the time, allowing them to keep moving. Once you eliminate the biggest choke points, then you can start to focus on some of the smaller things. You know, computers. It's great if you've got the electronic multi-point, but if you don't have one laptop per technician or one PC per technician, and the guys are standing there waiting for the next one to be done, again, every 6 minutes that those tends to expire and you never get them back. Something as simple as lifts, the shockwave lifts by Rotary. I mean, those lifts now, they lift the car and lower it in the time that it takes a traditional lift to just get up in the air. All of those little things that you can start to do, looking at your tool, making sure your tools work, number one, making sure you have the correct amount. All of those sort of things combined are really what adds to the shop. But again, for me, the two biggest things that we have found that have made that difference, electronic multi-points and the texting tools.
Well, Tom, that's incredible. You know, what I love what you talked about in the very beginning is put the value of the hour on the technician. And let me just give you a little tidbit on that, is that I recommend go to your financial statement, add up the entire customer, the service side of the statement, go to the parts side, add up all the parts that are on repair orders, divide it by your hours sold, and you have effective labor rate, or I call gross profit parts and labor per hour. And our group, you know, we're in California, it's a little pricey out here in Smoky, we're 165 parts and labor gross per hour. And when I think that when you look at, you're like, am I paying the tech to sit at the counter? You know, and you're going to find out, wow, it's a big number, isn't it?
Staggering.
As my good friend Ed said, all that money goes where, Ed?
Right to the bottom line.
Goes right to the bottom line.
The expense doesn't change a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the great thing about what we learned today, and I'm going to wrap it up here, is by this. Mike talks about how do we get retention, what the effect is on your shop. My good friend Ed talks about two-man teams and the importance of maintenance. And then Tom talks about wasting time. Let's bring all these together and talk about building an hours forecast for your store, and let's then pay on the bonus to your team. Service managers, parts managers, oh my God, I'm going to say it, parts counter people, technicians and foremen, all on the same focus of driving hours through your shop. I can't thank enough to my good friend Mike, Tom, and Ed. And Ted, you're doing an unbelievable job bringing fixed ops to the top of the table. Thank you so much.
Hey, Tully, we've got some amazing talent. And Tom Druzynski from the West Herr Auto Group, #1 group in New York State. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We learned a lot. Ed Roberts from Bozard Ford Lincoln. Ed's been with us all day. Ed, thank you so much. You still got a big day ahead of you there. So congratulations again on the
Thank you.
grand opening. Mike Vogel, the fixed ops coach. Mike, we appreciate you every single day. Tully, we wouldn't have a fixed ops roundtable without Mike Vogel. This is all Mike's brainchild. So he's been the coach the whole time, coaching us through. Michael,
Well,
thank you so
Mike.
much.
Thank you. Yes, for
Thank
sure.
you, guys.
And
Thank
Tully,
you.
I can't thank enough that introverted service manager I met back in 2005 up at Courtesy Chevrolet in San Jose, a young fellow named Tully Williams. When I first met him, I don't know who that guy was. Because this is a whole different person we have here now. And behind you, you got the screens flashing. You're showing us where we're at for the month, where we're at for the day. How yesterday was a green day. So I love the visuals you got going, and you're a great inspiration to all of us. Thank you, Tully.
Thank you, Ted, very much. And thank all the guests. Appreciate it. Gene and Tom and Ted, what you're bringing to the forefront has only been sales, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Tully.
Thank you.
Hey, it's our pleasure, and we're so grateful to have all of you be part of the Fixed Ops Roundtable. And Ted, that is a wrap, except we now go to our Best Practice Award final voting and tally, and we award those people who have done the best job according to our audience.
Best Practice Awards voting is coming up, everybody. So consider the folks on this panel, and we're about to start that voting.